Hello everyone, welcome to a huge episode of Breaking Even with Al Paton on your official SuperCoach AFL podcast feed. I'm Al Paton, back in the host chair after Patch did an outstanding job last week, but has been demoted one step down in the podcast this week. But still great to have you back because the other guys, gone.
They've been dropped. We had an incredible debut from Tarquin Oakley, but he then recommended Dylan Moore off the end of the pod, and more that got him dropped. Really, you can't be making those sorts of blunders at the top level. But I've held my spot despite the odds. I'm back on thin ice though, so we hope I'll perform this week.
No, I'm sure you will. And also joining us, and the perfect week to have her on, Chloe Williams. Welcome, because we won't jump too far into the questions, but there is a name, a Carlton player who you were spruiking all pre-season, and I thought, she's talking about this Jack Carroll guy. Didn't they trade him to St Kilda? But no, he's there on the Blues list, and I think he's going to be coming into my Supercoach team this week.
Yeah, Matt Carroll, a popular in for many so far this week, 99K, but we'll get into that later. Happy to be back and happy to be here for this episode to talk about Matt Carroll.
And there's a few other Blues who've come up as well, so we'll be delving into your Carlton knowledge. They did mention on the Phantom's Lair podcast, go and listen to that if you haven't already, the Nuff Nuff button. They thought they might have to ship it over to Melbourne for, there might be a bit of Carlton talk today, but very relevant in Supercoach when we're talking about trades this week. Reminder, like, subscribe, leave a comment, a review. I don't think we're going to turn anybody's hair peroxide at this stage, as they're doing over in the Lair. We might have to look into something like that. But we love your feedback. Get involved with the show and look out for the tweet, obviously, social posts early in the week to get your questions in. And we've got plenty of those to get to. SuperCoach Plus, if you haven't got it already, great resource for all your SuperCoach stats. And if you want to go to the next level, Code Sports, you can get it includes a SuperCoach Plus subscription as part of a Code Sports subscription, but you get all the articles and everything on top of that as well. So that's a great deal if you haven't got it already. Now, we know a huge important part of SuperCoach is injuries. Every SuperCoach knows managing injuries is a key to success. This is the Injury Report, proudly brought to you by HBF, your health dream team. Not a huge number of names on the list this week, but some very important ones in terms of SuperCoach. Straight off the bat, Sam Darcy, obviously horrible sight to see him go down, buckling the knee when he's just been so awesome to start the year. Good news that he didn't do an ACL, but still going to be out for probably most of the year. Sounds pretty nasty what's going on in there. So wishing him the best, and unfortunately, obviously a must trade if you've got him in SuperCoach. He was a fantastic pick because
if you picked him, mad props. But
yeah, so you can still claim that because he was absolutely flying. But at least he's a decent price. You can find another player to swap him to. And the other big one from the weekend was Sam Draper. Now I listened to the show last week, and I thought, watching that Essendon game, I thought, geez, I hope Patch brought Sam Draper in because he talked him up and he was absolutely flying. But then another Essendon ruckman down.
Please don't talk to me in this time of morning, in this trying time. I'm not emotionally prepared for this discussion. But
it turns out he would have been a good trade. Now I think he's still turned up, but now we probably have to trade him out. Still listed as a TBC on the injury list with an Achilles, but we think it's going to be...
That's a TBC bad, not TBC good.
So maybe straight swap to Todd Goldstein.
Moving right along, Ollie Wines was subbed out with a heart issue this weekend, which again is still a little bit scary, but the club's come out, he's come out, and they're not worried at all. They're just saying that it's something he's got to manage. Maybe he plays this week, maybe he doesn't. I don't know if that affects a Christian Moraes in terms of how the Port side sets up, but one to keep an eye on there. And Noah Bolter is not injured, but will be missing a lot of night games coming up for the Tigers because he's now been given a curfew after that court sentence was handed down on Tuesday. So what does that mean for Luke Traynor? We will discuss that a bit more later.
Yeah, and then back to the Carlton news, as I do love the Carlton news.
Hit the button.
Lockie Cowan, we don't have a button here, but Lockie Cowan is a test now for his hamstring injury, which was originally supposed to be a few weeks longer. So that could come into play in terms of Matt Carroll's job security for probably not this week, but for the long term, which once again, we'll probably talk about that later as well. And then down to the MRO, Connor Nash has been referred directly to the tribunal for that hit on Brian Myers, and Bailey Smith only fined twice, but only fined. So that is good for our SuperCoach sides.
I think back in the day, didn't they have a system where if you had enough fines, you could actually get suspended for a week, but they got rid of that. So that's good news for Bailey Smith and lots of people in SuperCoach.
And Zach Butters with his $50,000 bill.
That's a wrap on this week's injury report. Thanks to HBF. Make the smart move. Join HBF, your health dream team. Now, we've got a segment that we've been talking about each week, Fallen Primo Watch, and there are plenty of names on this list to keep an eye out for. I've put 3 at the top just because they're ones that we've been watching, given that they started the year with some injury clouds or missing games through injury. Don't know if they actually count as Fallen Primos. One is Nick Daicos, who has lost, I think, about 50K off his starting value. Now he's going back up again. He's 608,000 with a BE of 54. So this is probably as cheap as he's going to be for a long time. Not exactly, fallen really cheap, that far, but yeah, exactly.
Cheap-ish.
I think there's some questions there about him. Do you just think if you're going to get him, you have to get him now, or is there a way to play the game without Nick Daicos in your team?
It's a scary way, but it's the way I think I'll be doing it. I think this week, of those 3, but Daicos is the only one I would be looking to trade him because he's the cheaper one. He's still, despite being 600K, his value. So I think he's still worth trying to bring in if you can, but don't tear your team apart to do it, is kind of where I've landed. Phantom in the Lair was saying similar earlier this week, and I think I agree with him. If you're looking at a Bont or a Butters, look elsewhere.
Yeah, Bont, 680K, scored nearly 160 in his first game back, so he could go up from that price. Obviously, his price won't move for a week or two. And Zach Butters, 658K, his B's 90, so he's probably going up from that. So, yeah, I think those 2 guys, we just park them for now. They're in like 1% and 2% of teams, so it's sort of a weird sensation watching Bont when nobody's got him in Supercoach. But it's sort of not really killing you if other people don't have him either. So I think they're sort of mid-year buy kind of problems to deal with. I know AFC the Bont is, I think, like maybe the 6th most traded in player this week, and we know we love the guy, but surely if you're trading him in, you're not doing any other upgrades for probably a few weeks, I don't think.
Yeah, I did toy around with the idea of getting him into my team this week, but I just decided, look, it's not worth it. I'm going for someone actually closer to a Tristan Cherry, who I think has probably fallen to, the depths of where he will hopefully fall to. He's 558K at the moment. His break even is 102. So, even at that price point, you're saving almost over $100,000 compared to getting someone like Bont. So I've had to do a little bit of a restructure to do that. But
that's $100,000 virtually on Cherry starting price.
Exactly.
Too.
So, I think that there's probably other areas where you could spend that money instead of spending it on someone like a Bont. But the idea of him getting to, back up past 700K is a little bit daunting, but hopefully we'll be able to grab him again at a later date.
Yeah, there's one guy that I'm bringing in this week. I'm sort of hoping he'll provide us the cash to maybe do that down the track. But if you're talking about not getting a Daicos this week, Patch, is there anyone else on this sort of Fallen Primo list who has lost a fair bit of cash that you think is value and can, maybe not match Daicos in scoring, but if you're getting him for, as you say, 100 or 200 grand cheaper, that could work. You could actually work out ahead in that scenario. Any interest in like a Tom Stewart at 441K? Petrarca's down to 481. Connor Rosie still around the 500K mark.
Yeah, but Rosie and Petrarca are the 2 I'd really be looking at. I've got Rosie already. Petrarca is at this stage coming into my side. Tom Stewart, I was sitting in the media box on Easter Sunday, keeping a very close eye on him, and he was loose. He was running around without really having a man. So the role is there. He just scored terribly. He played pretty badly. Scored the 61, 63 in that ballpark. Was bad. I'm now less interested. If he could fall, his break-even is still 79. He could fall again if he puts up another game like that. I think he's value, but I kind of I'm looking elsewhere for the minute. Because then if you boost this week, you might be able to bring in a Matt Flynn and one of these undervalued guys, depending on who you're trading out. And I think that's a better move than it is to go hunting a Zach Butters, and then you get Matt Carroll and another, there aren't really any other rookies this week, so I don't know who else you're downgrading to. I don't know how else it works and makes your team better. This is getting more rookies off field, so I'm looking at these guys, and even down the track, you look at like a Jordan Dawson is someone I'm really looking at, Chad Warner, these sorts of guys.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think looking at that list, Stewart, to me, I'm just not sure he's that sort of top 6, top 8 defender anymore. He'll probably be, around that top 10-ish kind of mark, but when you look at in a couple of weeks, you've got players like Jack Sinclair's got a 180 break even. He'll be under 600K next week and getting down to somewhere where we might be able to grab him. And even if you didn't start Dane Zorko, he's 545K with a 171 break even. So he'll be, pretty affordable. His form the last couple of weeks hasn't been amazing. But yeah, these are the sort of guys I'd be looking at perhaps over a Stewart. And like you say, targeting a Petrarca, who I very smartly got at the start of the year, so I don't have to trade him in now, even though I've had 6 weeks of pretty underwhelming scores. But he could be a top 6 forward, and Rosie could be top 6 defender.
Which imagine saying that 2 weeks ago.
So I think those are the ones that I'd be aiming for. Yeah, Rosie I don't have, and sort of for me it's either him or Daicos, and I still haven't quite decided because it's not just them. It's then how does that affect to get a Daicos? I might have to trade out a Will Ashcroft or somebody. Whereas I might be able to keep them if I get a cheaper guy. So, but then watching Daicos when you don't have him.
It's very
Anzac
painful.
Day will be a pain.
It will be a pain.
Exactly.
Hopefully Sam Durham can lift for us all, play some sort of role on him, but I don't necessarily see that.
Sam Durham doesn't quite have the legs, I don't think.
No, I don't think so. But
we'll see. Another one I am looking at, Josh Dunkley is at 554k, 157 break even. So could get him around 500k depending on how he goes. But I think he's also a good example as to why we should avoid like a Butters and a Bont to start with, because you look at, people were trading Dunkley in droves at the start of the season when he was, 620k, and he's then dropped, 70k and will drop, upwards of 100 from here on out. It only takes 2 games of scoring. He's, scored 4 tons and then an 88 and an 83, which are not earth-shatteringly bad scores, but it's just that will happen to these other guys and we'll get them a bit cheaper.
And I know people traded in. There were some people who traded in a Humish Cloggage last week because you're just watching him every week thinking this guy's just going to keep scoring 140s. How can he not? And then you pay up top dollar and he drops to 70 or something. Yeah. So, it happens.
I think it works almost in the reverse too, because Cripps is someone who I've been wanting to move on for a while. I've kind of held on to him thinking, he had North and West Coast, didn't really, Supercoach-wise, reach great heights in those games. So he's dropped heaps of cash, but I think I'm just going to have to stick fat with him for now and wait for him to hopefully lift a little bit more so that when I do eventually trade him out, you get more value from that. So I feel like you can almost look at it from that perspective too. And obviously, naturally, I've got bigger problems in my team at the moment anyway. But if you do have someone like that who's dropping some cash, unless it's a bit more of a Tom Stewart situation where it's slightly more suspicious, if it's just more role-based, I feel like it is worth kind of sticking fat with that as well instead of jumping off and sideways trading.
Yep.
And
if you upgrade around him, then you've got Patrick Cripps averaging 94 sitting there instead of a rookie coming onto the field who could average 60 or 40 or 50
Christian Moraes or somebody.
Yeah, exactly. I think you just...
and that's what I was going to say when I'm sort of thinking about, do I trade out an Ashcroft or Finn Callahan to get a Daicos? A lot of people traded those guys last week or traded Matt Roberts, and of course it blows up in your face straight away. Now, the other thing, of course, that we have to factor in is the rookie roulette. And we're talking about trying to get the rookies off the field. The Phantom bangs on about that all the time. And, the idea is, rather than, trading there's some people have traded a Clayton Oliver to get a Daicos or something this week, but that means you've still got, Isaac Kako sitting in the, F6 position, or you're having to play a Luke Trainer or a Zach Reed, and we saw what can happen. So, ideally what we want to be doing at this time of year is trading out those rookies, replacing them with premiums, discounted price probably is the way to get those guys. And then you can, push a Zach Reed to the bench. So you're not having to take that score on the field. But of course, you still have to try and, get it right each week in terms of who do you put on the field, who do you put on the bench. So a quick round of rookie roulette before we get to your questions. Patch, would you start this week Zach Reed or Luke Trainer?
Is Noah Bolter playing? I think Zach...
probably not on the night game.
I think Zach Reed. I think because Trainer won't be in my team. So it's a reasonably easy answer. Chloe, Xavier Lindsay, Christian Moraes, pick one.
I think it does depend a little bit on whether Ollie Wine suits up, but for now I would say Xavier Lindsay. Al, what do you think? Isaac Kako or Haydn Cleary?
Oh, man, I brought in Cleary last week and thought he was safe to put on the field. That didn't really work out. I mean, depending on who you've got on the bench, you might be able to loop a Kako score on Anzac Day, which I might try and do that. I think I might back him in. He's one game, he's going to kick 3 goals and score 90, and that's what we're just waiting for, and get his cash moving and that sort of thing. And Anzac Day, maybe that's the day to do it. Patch, Sam Davidson or Sam Powell-Pepper, who's turned out to be one of the rookies of the year.
I traded Powell-Pepper out in round 1, and that's probably been my worst trade of the year. And I've made a few howlers already. I think, it's not an easy one. I think I like Davidson just for the role. Powell-Pepper, their Port are playing North. Change my answer. Come on down, Sammy Powell-Pepper. So, Chloe, for the back line, Riley Bice, Jackson Pryor.
Riley Bice, because I don't own Jackson Pryor, but that should be going to you to talk about Jackson Pryor's role. But I would say Riley Bice from my perspective.
That's fair. Back the moustache in.
Yeah, back it in. And then Elijah Hewitt or Levi Ashcroft.
I'm not even really counting Levi as a rookie anymore. He's just sitting there on my team. Might move around this week, see what we do with flex. But he's been down in flex. Haven't even really had to think about him. And so I'm definitely starting him on field, although Elijah was very good last weekend. And, yeah, this is the tricky thing with the rookies where I've got 3 or 4 rookies, like maybe a Bice if we're counting him, and Ashcroft, and even potentially Davidson, who are going well enough. They're still got more money to make. They're scoring well enough. I don't want to touch them. But then you've got your Christian Moraes types, and like he's not really worth that much. Like he's not going to get me Nick Daicos. So yeah, that's a really tricky balancing act. So I'm sure I'm not the only one dealing with that this week. But we better get into the questions, and there's a couple around Matty Flynn, who obviously came back into the West Coast team on the weekend. Now, I don't know if Chloe, you really want to talk about Matt Flynn. You certainly weren't the only one who started with him and traded him out. I certainly did that, but I at least traded him after round 1. When did you actually get rid of him?
So I carried him all the way through best 18. I went into, round 5, gather round. I was very hopeful that he would be named after he got, I think I wrote it down here somewhere, but he got an obscene Supercoach score in the waffle. Obviously, it was in the waffle, but he wasn't named, so I cut my losses, brought in Kieran Briggs to avoid the donut.
Oh, no.
Kieran Briggs, that's just even more of a disaster, really, than Matt Flynn. So I am trading Kieran Briggs out this week, which I know is a bad thing to do, but after watching that game...
Are you trading him to Matt Flynn?
No. Well, I'm bringing in Matt Flynn, but I'm trading Briggs to Cherry, and then I'm bringing Flynn in. I think it was for Sam Davidson in the end, which is a bit sad, but I just, as you said before, none of my other rookies were generating enough cash to really make those moves. But it means I can get Cherry at a lower price. But the moral of the story is I have only just parted ways with Matt Flynn, and he's now coming back into my team. So I wish I had just known and had some sort of foresight to be able to see that it would only be one game he was missing. I would have just copped the donut. But I did have him in R2, not in flex or R3, which I've seen a few people held on to him in those positions. But at the time I thought, well, if he's not going to get picked now, against Tom De Koning at that point in gather round, after such a good waffle hit out, Bailey Williams hadn't played great the week before. I thought, well, if it's not now, then maybe he's just never going to play again. We're never going to see him again. But alas. So yes, he's coming back in.
Never is a long time in football, but it's also an extraordinarily short amount of time.
Yeah.
I mean, so Patch, is Matt Flynn a must-have this week? I mean, as Chloe's just alluded to, West Coast selections, especially in the ruck, very unpredictable. I think Bailey Williams played all right in the waffle where Dossie had all those numbers on the lair.
Yeah.
I mean, are you getting Flynn this week? Do you think everybody has to get him? And then there's a couple of questions. Could Matt Flynn be a viable flex guy or R2? And someone asking, is it crazy to trade TDK to him?
Yes and no, I think. I don't know. Like, Matt Flynn himself came out, spoke to Eliza Riley in the rooms after the game, said the number 1 ruck role is still not locked in, and that I don't like that. Matt Flynn, if you're bringing him in, it's as a cash grab. You're not bringing him in to be your R2 for the rest of the season. If you want to make cash at R2, go for it, but say it with me, folks, set and forget. Just don't.
I would warn against making cash at R2 because, yes, I thought that was the smart play. And then I ended up with Kieran Briggs for a couple of weeks. So if you're going to drop that far down and you're going to spend that money to bring in a primo in another line, just be prepared for the fact that when Flynn eventually gets dropped again, you're going to have a bit of a crisis on your hands and have to hope there's a good ruck which you can get to, which there probably won't be, and then you create a whole series of extra trades you have to do.
It's just so much harder in the ruck with the limited spots there.
I would rather Matt Flynn at R3 than R2. Like if you
can
only bring him in at the ruck line, bring him in at R3.
Just to sit there and make money. It's not ideal, but
it'll end in tears if you've got him at R2. Remember Jordan Sweet last year, not to bring up receipts, but
unfortunately I was part of that as well. So I think maybe set and forget will be for me next year.
I actually got Sweet at R3 because my rucks were set and I didn't want to touch them.
Yeah,
so
but you were setting them, you were forgetting about them, exactly. And you avoided the heartbreak.
Yeah, but I still got his money, so
did.
That worked out. But he was a bit cheaper than Flynn, though.
Yes, I just think it kind of scares the pants off me. Trading Tom De Koning down to him feels insane. We haven't seen Pito back yet. We don't know if Pito's back yet. Like, does Mackay come back and they just keep one ruck?
Yeah, so I think that Mackay should come back honestly, there might only be one change, Mackay for Lewis Young, I would
Yeah.
say, which Lewis Young played well, but at the end of the day,
He's not Harry
would make
Mackay.
way for Mackay, exactly. But I haven't heard too much chatter in terms of Pito actually returning.
Yeah.
Personally, I would hope so, but, maybe they're just going to try and use Tom De Koning as the number one rock for as long as possible, just, with that contract situation up in the air. So, wait for teams on that one. But I expect it to only be the one change. But
Yeah, there's a lot of the skies falling around Tom De Koning, and until I see him play a game with Mark Pittonet, I'm not trading him out. Like he's averaging, what's he averaging? 118?
if he plays forward too with Pito, he would still get some CBAs and then could also kick a few goals. So his scoring potential might possibly still be there. I know it hasn't in the past, but he's obviously improved as a player since then. So I definitely wouldn't be jumping off at this early stage. But Flynn's still a great cash grab. So if you can find another way to get him, that is probably ideal.
I think this is why I love Flex, in that Luke Trainer is the same price as Matt Flynn. You make $2K by trading Trainer to Flynn. We've got oodles of DPPs now. If you can just swing someone into the back line and swing whoever's in your flex into another position, just whack Matt Flynn at flex. If it goes pear-shaped next week, if he, is named and scores 60 and is dropped, he's still made, he makes 80K or something.
Like that,
I still think that could be worth it for the long term of if he plays 4 games, he's up at nearly 500K and is your ticket to a Daicos. I think that risk is worth it. I don't think the risk is worth it at R2, is my long-winded way of answering those 2 questions from Pato and VC.
Yep, no, I agree with that. Yeah, I think just because of the other rookies seem to be sort of drying up, we need someone like him to generate that money. But I wouldn't be touching my ruck line at all to do it. I think, flex, absolutely perfect. We better move on to some other questions. Yes, one for you to get the NAFI alert out. Chloe, are you worried about Lockie Cowan and Matt Carroll? What if Cowan came in this week and Carroll wasn't picked? I don't know what we'd do because there's not really much else around in terms of cheapies in Supercoach.
Yeah, that would be heartbreaking, but I would say that Carroll would hold his spot. I don't have conclusive evidence to provide to the podcast, but I would say in good faith that I think that Cowan will possibly return through the VFL. So I think for this week, we're safe, but if you're looking for the long term, I would
when you say long
say
term, like next week?
Well, exactly. That's what I'm alluding to, is that you get that kind of level of uncertainty that you wouldn't quite have with, say, what we've had with Zach Reid. His position has been safe. I can't necessarily say that with that much confidence that will be the case, but I think he's played really well. It just kind of depends what the club's looking for, to be honest, because he does play that more offensive role off halfback as opposed to Lockie Cowan, who would be more equipped for that lockdown role. But to be honest, the past couple of weeks, Carroll hasn't really had the opportunity to really show the lockdown ability, which is why I think, Geelong's got such a strong forward line. So this week would be a great test to see whether he can do that as well as kind of set up in attack. So, I think it's really interesting. I think it really is a line ball in terms of one of those ones where it's a week-to-week basis in terms of matchups. In terms of Cowan and Carroll, because Cowan wasn't necessarily setting the world on fire before his injury, but Carroll hasn't necessarily set the world on fire, but he's been pretty good for someone who, has only just debuted, as opposed to Carroll, who's played at least a season of games. So, I would say Carroll, when he played, was pretty good, even from a Supercoach perspective. The first game, I think he had 12 kicks from his 12 disposals. So we love to see that. He's got amongst the score involvement. So at 99K, I would say for me, I'm bringing him in. I think it's worth the risk. Obviously, it's a curveball with Cowan. We're expecting at least probably 2 more weeks of clear air. But I guess if he is named this week, which I expect him to be, he kind of has that chance to show that it is his spot in the team. And if he does that, I think he might be safe for a few weeks more. But it kind of does make you feel a bit more uncertain about bringing him in.
So if somebody has listened to that and is like, nope, I don't want Matt Carroll, I don't want a rookie that's not going to have good job security to hit the nuff alarm again. What's the deal with Corey Durden? Hey, he's 100K more, he's 208K in the forward line, different end of the ground, but he's got a lower break even, negative 66. What's the go there? How's he scored 290s in a row? Who is this man?
Well, the thing about Corey Durden, he's a great lead-up mark, kind of similar to what Matt always was, but he's just had so many injuries in his career so far. So it's great that he's been able to come back. But Dossie, if you are tuning into our podcast today, please close your ears. He's not necessarily had the best opponents to judge in West Coast and North Melbourne. So I think he's kicked 6 goals throughout those 2 games, which obviously helps. But at the same time, Carlton's been crying out for someone to be able to have that smaller presence and still be able to hit the scoreboard. But, he gets a lot of marks, he gets a lot of tackles. He's a good pressure player, but it's almost could be the second coming of Haydn Cleary, where it's like, well, some weeks he's going to, just that classic small forward. Nothing about his role has changed.
Yep.
He's not attending CBAs. He's still a small forward. He's just had 2 really good games. I'm pretty sure it's a contract year for him this year as well, so he's going to want to be playing well. But I don't think you're going to be able to see him keep up that level of scoring. So I wouldn't rely on him to be, say, an on-field rookie. His spot in the team is safe. So if you're just looking for someone on your bench to generate cash, but I can't promise you that he's not going to have a week where he gets a 30, know. So, I would say it's similar to Cleary. Yeah. Matt Carroll, on the other hand, is 99K.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're paying 200K,
Yep.
look, nothing. He's great, but nothing about his role has changed, and he's had some easy opponents to come back into the side. So I'm not looking at him at all. If I hadn't have traded in Cleary last week, I still wouldn't be looking at him. But,
There we go. That's comprehensive. Get out of here, Corey.
Yes, sorry, Corey.
Happy for you, but
happy for you, but not in the team. Sorry.
No.
A couple of questions here, which is sort of a similar thing that I'm wrestling with about, we want Daicos. We see the prices starting to get totally out of hand, but how do you actually get there? And one question is, Will Ashcroft and Nick Daicos worth it if I don't have a Humphrey type? I think, Bailey Humphrey's sort of perfect player to upgrade to him, but if you don't have him, this is me. It's like, is it Will Ashcroft that has to go, or can I try and sort of find a rookie somewhere? And he's asked about Davidson or Murphy Reid, and then Angus Robbo asking, is Clary or LDU to Daicos? So, in my team, I've got Clary, I've got Finn Callahan, I've got Chera. I don't want to touch Chera. He's going really well. Will Ashcroft obviously dropped an absolute stinker last week, but he was really good before that. They're the guys who I could... Is that worth it?
Ryan Marich in the same boat as
well.
well.
I don't want to trade him yet.
No.
So
I didn't even want to trade Sam Davidson, but he was the only guy who had made enough money. He finally reset his cash gen last week, and unfortunately have to see him go. But someone like an Ashcroft is a completely different story because, as you said, it's just one bad game. And that's the thing about Supercoach. You just never know what's around the corner. You could blow your team up to get Daicos, and I won't moz him or anything, but you just never know what's around the corner. If
Ahead of Anzac Day, I wouldn't mind if you mozzed him. We might win.
If you're picking up what I'm putting down without stepping into Tim's role of mozzing players, I just don't think that's worth it to upgrade one of those mid-price guys, especially the ones you listed. I've got Oliver, Chera. Most of them have been, and Rosie, they've all skyrocketed in price. That Cripps is my D6 or something now. So he's the one that I was going to swap to Daicos initially, but even that would have been a bit stupid at this point in time.
No,
so.
Get your rookies off field, bring in a Petrarca, bring in a Tom Stewart, bring in someone cheap, bring in a Matt Flynn.
Just hope that you can get Daicos
bring in
later,
someone else. I think once the rest of the team is complete, once the rookies are off field, then we can look at the Will Ashcrofts to Daicos, Will Ashcrofts to Bond situation. Not now. That's my...
Yeah.
Is that the right call? I don't know. Is it going to hurt watching him score 180 against Essendon? Yes, it will. But
Daicos will eventually cop a tag, though, I think, as opposed to someone like Bond who would be more likely to... But in saying that, Daicos has already...
He's already
triumphed the Jordan tag, and I think watching him in that game at Gather Round, he's finally... that was probably the best game I've seen him play just because of the fact that he's finally been able to navigate that. So... I don't know, maybe we won't have that joy anymore, but... Maybe.
But it's a marathon, not a sprint. I'm hedging my bets. I'm going to drop a bit in rank over the next few weeks because I'm not going to go after one of these big guys, but I'm hoping the fact that I don't have rookies on field and still making cash is better long term. So I think it is a bit mad to be trading your Olivers, your Callahans, your Ashcrofts, these guys that are sitting in the middle that are humming along, averaging 100. Just keep them. Keep them and get
Roberts
rid of...
last week.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect example.
Yeah. And I think if people who are trading all those guys out now are getting rid of a Davidson, getting rid of a Marriage, what are they going to do in what's your upgrade in 2 weeks? Who have you got left to trade? You'll be, you just have Caden Cleary on your bench.
Yeah.
And it's going to be really hard to make upgrades.
What do you do?
That was my problem is when Will Day and Nathan O'Driscoll went down, they were kind of the guys who I was eventually going to upgrade. So I had to panic, get rid of them. And now I'm kind of in a tricky spot where, that's part of the reason for bringing in Flynn is I kind of have to restart that cash gen. Yeah. So I think just be mindful of where you could, move those guys to in the future. Is now the best time to be moving them? Most of them at the moment the answer is no. So
yep.
Because I was looking at Reid and Trainer, thinking, in 3 weeks these guys will be worth $400,000 and I can do all this with the money, and then it doesn't take long for that to all go off track. Now, a couple more questions. One about Luke Traynor, which we touched on earlier. Should we keep him now that Noah Bolter is going to miss, we think, this week and a few other games based on what happened in court? Do we think that makes Traynor...
I think there's an argument where you could.
Yeah.
I think he's the guy, we're all looking to cull someone this week. I think he's the natural guy to go down to Carroll. I don't think there's any issues with that. But if you want to hold him, sure. He will...
If you're able to, then yeah. Because I think they said that he was just being managed anyway.
Yep.
I don't think Bolter's role directly impacts him. Maybe someone like a Jacob Blight would come back into the fold. But obviously, in terms of a squad mentality, it does increase his chances. So
Yeah, and his scoring has actually been, apart from that first round, really reliable. Probably even more than, I'm probably keeping Zach Reid just because his break-even is lower.
Yeah.
But I'd probably be more confident fielding a Traynor that he would get a 70-plus type score.
Yep.
Yeah, me too, actually.
Whereas Reid could really go either way. So, if you can make your trades work and keep him for a few more weeks, I guess the thing is his cash is going to stall.
Yeah.
Might take him a couple of weeks to reset that break-even and get moving again. But, in terms of scoring, I think he'll actually be all right. Question about the best structure for upgrades. Dolan here could finish his forward line with Nick Martin, but he still has 4 or 5 midfield slots that are not top-line primos. So, for me, the midfield is where all my attention is at the moment, and maybe you can bring a Petrarca in and that sort of frees up a spot somewhere else. But, it's looking at some people, trying to upgrade me, or people looking to get a Whitfield or something this week, and I think I'm not even looking at my defence. That's kind of, with Bice there and I've still got Roberts, that's kind of fine, and I'll deal with that later. But, the midfield is where my attention is at the moment.
We don't all have fine defences.
Would you be worried about finishing your forward line this early?
I wouldn't, just because I feel like the forward line is an area this year where, it's been quite a tight race to get into the top forward line numbers. So I would say there's quite a lot of people, even if you've got one of those guys who are kind of on the cusp of being one of the best forwards, I don't think you'll lose out as much compared to if you have an incomplete midfield.
Yeah, I think you look at where your rookies are, and if your bad rookies are in the midfield, then target the midfield, and if your bad rookies are in the back line, target there. Just try and get them off field.
Fair. What about Matty Rowell? Is he still a question mark, Stormzy asks, given he's only scored well against the bottom teams and the way that he fell off last year, which is well documented. So Rowell, the way the way the Supercoach pricing works, it's kind of bizarre that he's gone up, I think, $8,000, even though he's averaging over 120, but just because he dropped his bad game on his sort of bubble round. But we know what happened last year. Could you still go there this year, Chloe? And he's still only $558K. It's a pretty good price for someone who's scoring as well as him.
Yeah, well, I was tossing up for a while between bringing in Rowell or bringing in Cherry. I landed on Cherry just because of that kind of lingering doubt about Rowell going forward. I think watching him, he's improved his game, his outside game as well. So he's probably a better player than he was last year. But I guess that longevity, stamina sort of factor does come into it. They've obviously got a lot of contributors at Gold Coast as well. So maybe it would be him one week, Anderson another week. We're still kind of waiting to see whether Flanders can get back to that scoring potential. Took's gone forward a bit, so he's not too much of an issue. But yeah, I don't know. It's a bit 50-50 because I was tossing up with the same thing. So I don't know what your thoughts are. I think the price is great. I would definitely target a Rowell over someone like a Daicos for now if you're confident that he's going to finish as one of the top mids. So that's, I guess, the question. Do we think he'll finish?
I got him 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. I brought him in just in time for that stinker that he dropped. But no, I'm really happy with him. But given the other players around now, I'd probably go for a Rosie or a Petrarca ahead of him this week, I think.
Yeah, I think we've had the patch where he's scored really, really well. He's played the bad teams. Will probably come back to earth a little bit. And if that turns it into a 110 average for the rest of the year, he's improved as a player, you're right. I don't think he drops as hardly as he did last year. But I think he's no longer value. He's just about right, or he's just a little bit cheaper than you'd think he'd be by season's end. So I think he's a fine pick. I just think there's better options.
Yeah.
Or cheaper options, rather.
Patch, is it more important to cull non-playing rookies?
Yes.
Or maxed out low rookies? So if you've got Moraes who's gone up 80K or something.
Get the non-player rookies out of here because Moraes could drop an 80, Connor Stone could drop a 60. Heaven forbid. There's always the hope. There's always hope with the playing rookies that they will have a spike game, whereas you're not going to get a spike game from someone playing in the VFL.
Maybe I can get some live on-air trade advice then, because I still have James Leake in my back line. I've traded Luke Traynor to Matt Carroll just for the money. So someone like a James Leake hasn't made any money, so it's what's the point of moving him to a Matt Carroll because you don't get that benefit of the little cash gain. James Leake and Harry Boyd are my only non-playing rookies. So is that something that you would recommend then, using that justification, or do you think that it's still worth it to pocket the cash?
I mean, it depends. I think if you only got the 2 non-playing rookies, I think that's not the end of the world. But yeah, if you're starting to look at, I'm seeing some teams being posted up who have kind of 4 or 5 guys on the bench that aren't generating cash, and if you're in that situation, that's when I'd really start to worry. And last week probably would have been the ideal chance to then get just sideways 2 dead rookies to Tom Gross, RIP. But I think you do need to make sure you've got that cash generation moving along, and 1 or 2 dead rookies is okay. But yeah, if you've got 3 or more guys on the bench not generating cash, then I'd be getting a little bit worried.
Yeah, that was my thinking last week, and I did exactly that, and it didn't work out great. Although Tom Gross did make some money and has a negative break even, so hopefully he gets a full game this week. But yeah, getting rid of a Lucas Camporeale type.
I was about to say that. Yeah,
he wasn't playing. Yeah, I think you do need to have cash coming in, but at the same time, yeah, I think this is nearly the last week really to do it, because you want to be making money off your trades, as you're talking about, like from a trainer to Carroll move, to facilitate your upgrades. So, this is probably the time to try and clear out that deadwood if you can. But yeah, there's not a heap of guys to trade in.
A lot of people have been talking as well about Campo's decent numbers in the VFL, but I'll just say, hopefully this doesn't blow up in my face, that I don't think that he will be coming back in anytime soon, just based on the other people who are available at the moment. For once, Carlton's injury list, apart from the long-term ones, is pretty good. Yeah. Someone like a Cottrell is kind of pushing more up onto the wing role as well. Yeah, and even Doherty wasn't playing last week. So, yeah, I think unfortunately he has gone a bit behind in the order. So, yeah, I've just seen a couple of people talking about whether he could potentially come back in. Unfortunately, from my perspective anyway, I think it's a no. Watch him get picked and blow up in my face. But, yeah, I think that I would just put that out there because I've seen a few people talking about that.
Luke Pye is asking, is Ned Long still a target? So he's gone up to nearly 300k, I think. I have to check his exact price, but he's obviously scoring really well. But is the boat sailed on that one?
I think it has, personally, just because of that awkward price. I mean, obviously, though, I am willing to bring in Matt Flynn, but that's for that huge cash grab, really. Yeah. But honestly, Ned Long, I was looking at him last week, couldn't really make it work. Even last week, it was a bit of an awkward price. Props to anyone who started him. And held him
this close to bringing him in ahead of that round.
Started him and held him through there. I think Fance was pretty big on him at some point too. So that would have been a great start if you picked him and held him. But because his role is just amazing now, it's worked out perfectly for him. Yep. Love watching him play, but can't find room for him in my team. So I think the ship has sailed.
Yeah, I don't hate it.
I don't hate it, but I think it depends really where your team's at, though.
Like, who are you trading to him?
Well, if you can get a dead rookie up to him, I'd love that. Like, I'd think that's a good move to get cash and go and get some more points.
I guess it's similar to the Flynn move in a way, because Flynn, you get the instant cash. Long, you would get guaranteed role, guaranteed scores.
I feel better about
slow cash gen.
You would rather have him on your field than a Xavier Lindsay, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, true. Yeah. You probably just, from here, like you say, because you're getting in on the ground with Flynn, you get all that cash, whereas Long's already made a heap. Yeah. And you're getting, you might get another 100k from here if it all goes well.
You get the good scores as well, though, which I guess, and not the having to check the team list, being like, where's Flynn? Yeah. Which is not fun for an experience.
Not West Coast teams on a Sunday every week.
Oh, that's right, exactly. Even this week they play, the second last game of the round. So.
Yeah.
What's the name? Jack Williams in the ruck, and then Flynn and Bailey Williams on the bench, and we just sit there just going, what do we do? Anyway.
A couple more to wrap us up, getting close to the end here. Squid Lips has said he just had an absolute shocker last weekend, and it fell from 5,000th overall to 25,000. Just the planets aligned in completely the wrong way. But so he's going all out with just a quick yes or no on this trade. He's trading Matt Roberts, Clayton Oliver, and Max Hall to Matt Carroll, Nick Daicos, and Marcus Bontempelli.
Don't like it. I get where you're coming from. It's fun to do on a Monday. Don't like it. Not for me.
No, I'm going to say no as well. Hall, I think, is probably, it's about time for him to go. But, we've sort of talked about, just finding some value rather than just going all out. I mean, I suppose if you could get, a Butters or a Bonton, they'd be huge pods when no one else has got them. But you're just spending so much of your salary cap.
Yeah. I like value, so I would probably say no to that. But I can see why. I can see the temptation. But I would probably
It will look amazing.
It'll
on
look
paper.
great. You'll open your team and you'll think this is great, but that doesn't always last that long.
And like you said, it's getting like if you're trading out an Oliver, and who else was he trading out? Matt Roberts. Like, who are you playing on field instead of those guys?
Yeah.
Like you're having to.
Or the Roberts one as well. Like, coming from, are you doing a direct swap? You'll have to play Matt Carroll instead of Matt Roberts.
Yeah.
It's a pretty stark contrast.
Yeah, so that could really cancel out all the points you get from a Bond or something. Anyway, it's amazing as it looks. This is definitely crank up the nuff alarm here. One for you, Chloe. Thoughts on Matt Kennedy as a pod instead of track?
Instead of track is the interesting part because, we all think that track will finish as one of the better forwards. But at the moment, the top forwards, we've got McRae, Daniel, Nick Martin, Rankin, Horn Francis, and Kennedy. So he's at the moment, after the first couple rounds, one of the top forwards. I do actually own him in draft. I wasn't quite. I actually so many iterations of my preseason team.
You did. You had in.
I put him in, but I think that was instead of Rankin. So I don't know if it necessarily would have worked out. But the interesting thing to note then, I only just realised, is that would mean that he's ahead of Bailey Smith, whereas I know there was a lot of people fading Bailey Smith. So did I read out Bailey Smith there? No.
No,
so
but that might be total points, is it though? So
it is, total points.
Smith missed that
Oh,
game.
yeah, that's true.
So he's
probably not on averages then, but he's doing well.
averaging
Kennedy.
97 compared to Track's 90 basically, and he's
turned
30
up.
grand cheaper.
He's turned up 3 times more than Christian Petrarca has, in that he's turned up 3 times.
I
The
guess
thing
it's
I
because
would
we
say,
know Track,
though,
and we all just assume at some stage he'll go back to the guy who scores 110, 120.
So Bont came back and their CBAs was still, his CBAs dropped a little bit, but it was more of an even spread between all of their mids, whereas, they just had the 4 guys going the week before to every centre bounce, whereas they kind of split it between, the 5 of them a bit more this week. But it wasn't a huge drop. I would just say to beware when Treloar comes back, what happens then, because for now it looks like Bont's return, and Bont still played great. Like, it didn't severely impact him, but obviously he did hit the scoreboard twice as well, which is a great asset, and a reason why he can score well is because of those extra goals. He's great at that, but also it's not probably going to happen every single week.
Well,
his highest average was 96.7 for the year back in 2022. He's averaging 97.3 at the moment, so his form at the moment is probably his best Supercoach form. Can he keep that up for a whole year? I think he's still one of those players who will get a bit of a low score and then get a bit of a high score, so his average probably looks a bit better than what you're getting on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah, and you look at those 3 spike scores as well. Against St Kilda on the weekend, they were pretty putrid.
Yeah.
North Melbourne in round 1, North Melbourne have not been doing particularly well this year. And Carlton, while they were still bad, he scored 113. So, against
Some extra feeling in that one too.
Yeah, against Brisbane it was 62, Freo it was 90, Collingwood it was 79. I think that's probably closer to what we'll get.
He's good for my draft side, I would say. But I would,
incredible draft pick. Great draft pick.
He's a top forward at the moment, but I would be getting Track if I was choosing.
The Tracker scores, as frustrating as he's been, he hasn't gone below maybe 79 or something was his lowest. He's had 3 or 4 in the 90s.
Yeah.
So
he's coming back into form.
Around the mark. He's just, it'd just be nice to get 115 or something. When, last week looked like it could have happened, and he's, blown a goal from 10 metres out and stuff like that. So it'll come together. And I mean, they do play Richmond on Anzac Eve as good as the Tigers were last week. They're still giving up some pretty decent numbers. So, yeah, I think Track is a good shout this week. You mentioned the top scorers on that line. Quickly mention the other positions. In defence, we've got Whitfield, clear number 1, Sinclair, Wanganeen, Miller, Lockie Ash. Didn't really see that coming. Dane Zorko and Max Holmes are the top 6 at the moment. In the ruck, TDK's number 1, then Gawn and Cherry. And in the midfield, of course, the one we all knew at the start of the year that George Hewitt would be the number 1 player.
Obviously.
Number 1 scoring player in Supercoach.
Naturally.
Obviously, guys.
After 6 rounds, Andy Brayshaw, number 2, Matt Rowell, number 3. Oh, my team doesn't look so bad when I read these names. McCluggage, Liberatore, Touk Miller. Daicos is snuck in there, and Zach Merritt as well. But Chloe, I know nobody actually asked about him. No one wants to
about
trade
George.
him in, even though he's 611k or something. So it's not an insane price. But what's the deal with George Hewitt? Why is he the number 1 player in Supercoach?
Well, I think everyone's just wondering whether this purple patch will last, I guess. And I can say he's actually scored. When you can go through and check their high scores versus every team. So George Hewitt has scored 100 plus versus every team in the competition, even Carlton when he was at Sydney. So, it's just whether he can keep it up at the moment. He's averaging 30.3 disposals, 8.2 clearances and 7.3 tackles. So he's kind of playing that tagging, obviously defensive midfield role. So, sometimes that is a bit dangerous because you can get dragged out of the centre bounces a bit more, but then he still gets his hands on the ball. Like when I was watching Carlton North, like he was every time I would look at a contest, I just kept seeing him everywhere. So, but Cripps has not been at as many centre bounces recently, playing a bit more forward. They're still kind of finding that balance with that too. So I would say I would be wary, but if you started him, great. I probably wouldn't target him. I don't know if he'll keep it up for the whole year, but
the sliding doors moment where 2 weeks ago I brought in Noah Anderson instead of George Hewitt and was
Did you
tossing.
actually consider it?
I genuinely was tossing between the two of them and went, no, what am I doing? This is silly. Why would I be considering George Hewitt? And 300 points and 2 weeks later.
And he's for now still
That'll
at
show
3%.
me.
I think maybe a few people will trade him in, but maybe just no one is.
He's
targeting him.
600K. I'd be trading
He's a
in
bit
someone
expensive.
who's 500K this week. Yeah, if you've already got him, well done. You've won.
I wouldn't recommend trading him, but I just wanted to talk about the fact that he was
number
one. Yeah.
No, definitely worth mentioning because, when you look at those overall scores, it's not a name I expected to see, but now we've got sort of a Bont and a Butters back in the mix, and obviously Daicos is coming good. So, they've got a bit of ground to make up to catch him on total points. But, I guess if you're making trades, you're looking at
Daicos is
how
already
many
on his way there.
points they score from here. So, I think when it comes around to the middle of the year, things will maybe recalibrate a little bit to what we expected. But
when we're talking about why he's scoring so highly, though, I was talking to Al about this before. I saw someone on TikTok say that he comes into their work every week. They must work in a cafe and orders a piece of carrot cake. So every week, apparently,
the secret, is it? That's the secret.
Religiously every week, carrot cake. So if we're looking for who we want to be our M1 at the end of the year, someone just sends some carrot cake over to the dogs. Get some to Bond, get some to Butters, get some to Daicos.
If I start eating carrot cake, will my team improve?
Maybe. It seems to be magical, this carrot cake, obviously, because we couldn't have predicted this happening. So
Absolutely not.
I'm giving it to the carrot cake.
Oh, there you go. That's the intel that you get from Breaking Even podcast. Thanks, everybody, for jumping on. Thanks for all your questions. Really interesting week of trades. Chloe, thank you for all your intel today. Very vital when on a week like this.
Yep. Happy to be here for that. Hopefully it doesn't get me demoted for next week's episode when there's no more Carlton players on the bubble.
No, we like your opinions on other players too, so we'll have you back.
Okay, good. Good to know.
Bring some more late food chat and we'll slide you in.
And Patch, thank you.
Thank you. Hopefully I hold my spot as well. The competition is heating up over here, so we'll see how we go. But good luck hunting value to anyone listening.
Yeah, I think that's the message this week. Unless maybe I can get Daicos, which is going to be hard.
Unless.
It's Anzac Day. Yeah, it's going to be tricky. All right, thanks everybody. Great to have everybody on board. Don't forget we'll be back for the live team show leading into the Anzac Eve game. So that'll be a big night tomorrow night on Thursday night. But good luck with your trades and we'll talk soon.